Welcome to episode 446 of That Triathlon Show, the podcast presented by scientifictriathlon.com. I'm your host Michael, and on today's episode I interview Nikki Bartlett, who is fresh off a fantastic 5th place finish in the Ironman World Championships in Nice. She joins us together with her wife and coach Bex Milnes, who has been on the podcast a couple of times before, and they will talk us through the race, the strategy, how it all played out on the race day, and of course, we go into detail of the training leading up to the race, and we get a bunch of very interesting insights into what it takes to achieve this kind of performance, that a breakthrough performance for Nikki and a fantastic world-class result, really. But before we get into the interview, big thanks to our sponsors, Precision Fuel and Hydration. They create carbohydrate and electrolyte products that are effective, practical, and tasty. Whether it's a caffeine gel before a sprint triathlon to give you an extra boost, or a full-on carbohydrate and electrolyte strategy required for an Ironman, getting your fueling and hydration right can be the difference between achieving or not achieving your goal. And Precision Fuel and Hydration have products that make it as simple as it can be to get your fueling and hydration right. You can easily fine-tune your intakes to your carbohydrate, sodium, and caffeine requirements, ensuring that you get the most out of yourself on race day. Their gels, drink mixes, and chews are easy to digest, making them a reliable choice for any endurance athlete. You can get a free fuel and hydration plan for your next race with the Fuel and Hydration Planner on the Precision Fuel and Hydration website. And as a TTS listener, you can get 15% off your first order by using the code TTS24 on precisionfuelandhydration.com. And thank you to Senate. The Senate Indoor Swim Trainer is a dryland swim bench that allows you to improve your technique, power, and swim training consistency. For a lot of athletes, the limitation to swim training is the time commitment, especially for those living further away from a pool. If you need a 2 to 2.5 hour time window to be able to swim for 60 minutes, then it can make it very difficult to swim more than once or twice per week, as finding such a time window in a busy schedule is quite the challenge for most of us. So if you're in this situation where you're restricted on how much you can swim, you can use the Senate to complement your pool swimming with quick and efficient home-based workouts that challenge the swim-specific muscles, including core strength and stability, and give yourself a chance to keep improving your swimming even when you have limited time in the water. You can try the Senate risk-free for 30 days and get 20% off your first order on senateswimtrainer.com/TTS. Now, without any further ado, let's get into the interview with Nikki Bartlett and Bex Milnes. Welcome to That Triathlon Show, Nikki, and welcome back, Bex. How are you both doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah. All good my end.
Yeah, thanks for having us back, or me back. I've been on a couple of times, but yeah, we're hot off the heels of Nice World Champs, and then we got married the week after, so we're on the come down, I think.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like the kind of couple of weeks that you need another couple of weeks on the couch to recover from. But yeah, it sounds like everything. Well, we know how Ironman World Championship went for you, Nikki. You came 5th, so a fantastic result. Obviously, I'm going to start with the least original question, and then we'll move upwards from there. How does it feel to get that result?
I actually don't think it's sunk in. We were voice noting a friend yesterday, and it came to my attention we haven't even debriefed the race at all. We'd just be on such a high from the race, like just adrenaline high of, incredible feeling. So yeah, it would probably sink in hopefully over the next couple of days.
Yeah. What were the expectations going in? Did you exceed the expectations?
Yeah, yes and more, but also reached my kind of dream goal aim for my pro career. So I really thought top 10 was possible. And it was quite funny leading in because I think maybe one or two probably predicted that, but otherwise, like I was ranked 40th. I wasn't kind of in any of the top 20 predictions. So then you're like, oh, maybe it's just me who thinks this. But no, we had a race plan to try and get top 10. And then if you're going for top 10, I feel like anything can be possible between kind of 10th, 5th. And yeah, my all-time dream as a pro in my career is to have come top 5 at Ironman World Championships. That was the one thing I really wanted in my career. So yeah, so it's a dream come true.
Yeah, that is amazing. Bex, did you have any secret thoughts that maybe a top 5 was in the cards?
I think Nikki's probably underplaying it somewhat in that, yeah, if you'd have asked me pre-race, I would have said top 5 was possible. And that was, like, being really honest, that's what we were aiming for. Of course, it relies on everything going pretty smoothly. It relies on luck. But yeah, it's very much what we were aiming for. And I think it's just really interesting how things have played out. So one of the real vivid memories I have is back in 2019, we were on the plane back from Kona where Nikki had raced for the second time there. And we were kind of talking about the race, and Kona for Nikki has always been quite a challenge to race in the conditions, in that she feels that she struggles to actually race. It's more survive, which I think, if people are honest, a lot of people probably feel the same way. And she was kind of sat on the plane feeling frustrated and was just basically said, I just wish that the World Champs would change venue and rotate so it gives a different type of athlete an opportunity to race a world-class field over Ironman. And in the same breath, she said, wouldn't it be amazing if it was on Nice? Like, Nice would be a phenomenal World Champs course. And then she followed it up by saying, I think if it was in Nice, I could finish top 5. And so really that seed has been planted since 2019. And so to see that, then the decisions of split the World Champs and Nice being a women's race in 2024, like all of that has just kind of played out. Maybe she's a fortune teller, I don't know. But yeah, that's what we were aiming for.
Yeah,
that's that I missed it, Meg. Maybe I was missed it, Meg, in this case.
Yeah, it's definitely quite some foreshadowing there, but it's hard to argue with it being more exciting and more fair on athletes having different strengths too. And I don't know of any other sports where you would have at least a sport that depends on things like conditions or courses where it would always be in the same venue. So I think it's just, I guess, going with the times, becoming more established sport. It makes complete sense. Nikki, can you take us through the strategy you had for the race and then how it actually played out? Did you manage to execute accordingly, or were there things where you basically didn't or strayed from that original strategy?
Okay, we'll start with race morning. Race morning didn't go to plan at all. I'm like an early person. Like, I feel like if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late kind of person. And I set my alarm for 4:30, and we're going to leave at 10 to 6, which was kind of fine a bit, seeing as though we had to be like cooled down to race start at 6:45. And I could not do my second go at the toilet for the life of me. So I'm just being brutally honest here. And it just literally destroyed our morning plans in that I was like shouting to Bex, do I have time? Like, what's going on? She was like, it's 10 to 6. And then suddenly it was 6. So we had like 45 minutes to leave our apartment, 10-minute walk, body marking, do all the bike stuff and get to swim start. So it was getting a bit panicky. Anyway, fast forward, I'm pretty much like one of the last in. In fact, I'm last in. And it was a bit of a rush. And the swim start, I was like between Marjolaine and Lauren Brandon. And I don't really know where anyone else was. I just thought, my actual aim was to start on the second row, but I just ended up on the first row. And then suddenly this kayak just stops between me and Marjolaine. We're like, the gun's going to go. Like, you need to move. Like, I get that you need to try and keep us all. And also the swell was like moving everyone. It was really quite a stressful like lineup start. And then the hooter went, and I cannot remember anything for the first couple of minutes because I just got smashed. But I don't know if it was like just the swell was like pushing everyone on top of each other, like 45 girls there. Anyway, so I got going. I thought, oh my goodness, I reckon I must be right at the back here based on didn't feel like I'd actually moved. And then I looked up and there was a few hats I was like looking on Swim Start that I wanted to be around. Danielle Blamer, Jackie Herring, to name a few. And then I saw Daniela's orange hat and I was like, no way, that must be another orange hat. There's no way she's there. So because I hadn't done much, I managed to sprint. My sprint's not very good, so probably was just going a bit harder. Got on her feet, and then that was smooth sailing for the swim. And I came out with like my dream pack. And it was like 17th to 22nd. There was 5-6 of us there. And yeah, the bike, I feel like the bike was like really inefficient for like what I'm used to. I'm used to just riding like nice, smooth pace all along. But there was like within the race, there was packs forming. There was, like spikes. Then you had to go, I was going like 330 watts to go to the front for a bit. Then I'd get dropped back and then I'd get flung off the back. So then I'd try and like surge to try and find people again. And it just felt really inefficient. But yeah, the bike went to plan. I feel like I went probably a bit too hard, but it ended up fine. Probably because there was the descent as well back into town. But yeah, the bike was like my best power output I've ever done. It was like the toughest bike for sure. And then I got off and my legs were obviously pretty tired, but I was like, oh, I feel okay. And I haven't worn a running watch in a race for like 5 years. And Bex, you really, you did say you wanted me to wear a watch, didn't you? You're like, you're going to go off too hard. I think you need to wear a watch.
Yeah, well, I think typically in races, Ironman races that Nikki's done historically, they've tended to be, you know, like an Ironman Wales course where it's almost pace is irrelevant. It's kind of you're racing the terrain, whereas Nice was completely flat. And judging from the 270.3s she'd done earlier this year, she'd flown out of T2. And I think, like, if you're looking at like efficient racing, you can't be affording to do that in an Ironman. So I'd said, look, you need to pace, make sure you pace the first 10K in particular, because you're going to come off the bike and you're going to likely feel good and you're going to want to push on. And so we had a target of, I think it was like 4:10 a K. We were aiming to run around 2:53 was what we pitched. We thought she was capable of. But then, yeah, it became real clear about a kilometre in when Nikki comes running past me going, my watch isn't working.
I'd even practiced putting a watch on the move because I've not done that before. So I literally felt like my first 10K, all I was thinking about was this stupid watch. Like, I was like, why won't it pick up signal? And then when it did, it was telling me I was like 2 minute a K or like 5:50. And I was like, well, I know I'm neither of those. And I spent literally the first 10K fitting this watch. And I was like, this is ridiculous. This is exactly why I don't wear a watch. But me and technology, for anyone who doesn't know me, I don't get on with technology very well. If it doesn't work in 30 seconds, like, it's game over. So I put it in my back pocket, because luckily our Santini suits have some good back pockets. And then I just run to kind of feel, well, I ran the whole marathon to feel.
But I think in hindsight, it probably... That's probably where our like plan on paper altered most when it came to the run, because I think at that point where Nikki came off the bike, she was I'd
say a bit further ahead than I thought I would be.
No,
I know Bex isn't. I was wanting to be as close to top 10 as possible.
You were needing to be in the top 10.
I think Bex expectations versus mine were like, you were like, yeah, you can come off well within top 10. I was like, oh, if I can come off near the top 10, that'd be great.
But essentially, you know, she was catching fifth, she was catching Sanchez and closing that gap. But the kind of main threats from behind were Penny Slater and Jackie Herring. And Penny Slater was, you know, for the first half of the race, at least consistently 3 minutes behind, which in an Ironman is, you know, is reasonably close. And I think in hindsight, had I have pulled Nikki back and said, no, you need to pace this better, the result of that would have been she would have slowed, which would have then in turn given Penny a bit of a sniff of catching. And just because Nikki hasn't raced an Ironman in such a long time, we didn't really know how the second half of the marathon was going to hold together. And so I didn't really want to take the chance of saying, slow it down and give somebody a confidence boost running from behind. And then it would not really know how it was going to unfold. So actually, in retrospect, if you were trying to run the quickest marathon you could, it was probably a bit of an inefficient way of doing it. But in the racing dynamic, I think it worked quite well. So, yeah.
And Penny was like, amongst a whole list of other girls, was I wrote a list of people I didn't think I felt were unbeatable. And then I wrote a list of like people on their good day would be hard to beat, but I could also if I was on a good day. And that list was pretty long. And Penny was like up there and one of the girls to be watching for that kind of 7th and above, I thought, going into the race. So when she came off the bike, she got a couple of minutes. I was like, golly, this could be a good run race, this. So yeah, I kind of just went to feel, and I felt like the first 2 laps I felt fine, which most people probably say. And then I caught Sanchez, and my last 15K, I really had to concentrate because, like, before I was kind of like able to like give a thumbs up or saying thank you to people cheering. The last 15K, I was like, I literally just need to focus on this. And then I can remember Bex at the last 1500, Bex like, enjoy this, like, soak it up. And I don't know what happened after that stage, but I felt like the whole race just like was just flooding me with tiredness. Like I just missed the last aid station. So I don't need last aid station. Rookie error, just at least get maybe a sip of Coke. But yeah, I felt like I was really suffering the last 1500. And then as I was getting closer, and then media came up to me, I started to get really emotional. I was like, oh my God, this is actually happening. Like the last 15K, I kept saying, this is yours to lose now. You've got this 5th place, your dream. I just kept saying to myself, 15K, oh my God, how amazing will 5th feel crossing that line? And I started to get emotional as I came down. And I've never been that emotional coming down a finish line before. I was like, this is like my ultimate dream just come true with all our family was there, like Bex's parents and brother, my parents and brother, our friends had come out. It was just, it was just, it was like the perfect month there. Like nothing went wrong. It was really bizarre. And that never happens. So I just wanted to soak it up because I was like, this will never happen again.
You never know, but it's probably one of those days that you get only a maximum of a few of in your career where you can really feel that level of positivity. So that's really cool. About the pacing on the run, do you know off the top of your head the first and second half marathon splits, or roughly what they ended up being?
Do you know?
No.
I literally don't have a clue.
No.
I didn't even know. I didn't know if there was I didn't really feel a difference between first half and second half, but obviously there was a significant. Didn't you say I was going off at like 2:50?
I know the tracker in the first 10K was having a come in at like a 2:44 marathon. And I was like, that's way too quick. But equally, it was matching the pace of the people from behind. So I knew that it was unlikely Penny would run that either. So, but yeah, to answer your question, I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know. It was more.
The final marathon time was
2:57, I think, in the end.
Yeah.
But like, just for context, like, I reckon I don't actually know if this is the right number. I reckon I've done 10 to 12 Ironmans, and I reckon one has gone to plan. I reckon that 90% of them have been pretty terrible. One's gone to plan and one was really good. So my history in Ironman's like to the point that most Ironmans I do, I'm like, maybe I'm just not made for the long. But because when you start saying that to yourself, it makes you want to go back even more. Because you're like, no, I want to try. I can do this. I can do this. So I was going into this race, and I even said to Bex openly, I was like, I've come in this, I've done everything possible. I'm the fittest swim bike run I can be. If I can't do it, that is me done for Ironman. So when I got into the marathon, I just literally did not know how that was going to go. And then when the watch failed, I was like, I literally have no idea what this run's going to get, how this run's going to go. But yeah, it helped having felt like a home race. Like the amount of people cheering for me, I just felt, it felt very special. So very appreciative of those people who were supporting because, it really motivated me through that run.
Yeah, and the 4-lap run course will have helped with that as well, to have the motivation to get to see your supporters 4 times during the run.
Oh, yeah.
On the bike, did you have, you described a bit about it being a bit inefficient and maybe a bit surgy, but did you have some kind of target, like did you ride to power? Did you have certain powers that you wanted to hit on the climbs, or what was the strategy there more specifically?
Well, the first part, I didn't want to go too hard, but I found myself either going beyond what I wanted to go. Like I did not want to go over 300 watts. I didn't want to surge like that, but I was having to go like way over that to get to the front. I'd get to the front, then people would start coming around. And then I'm terrible at the race ranger. Like I don't even like it in orange. So I'm therefore in like it with it not on. And I was like that in Les Sables when it was there. And you end up getting like flung off the back. So then I'd like surge to like go forward. And it was just that consistent rotation for me. I felt like until we got to the main climb. Then we got to the main climb. I was like, I just need to go off to the front on my own and just do my own thing. And that was our first proper power target. Bex had a power target in mind. And to be fair, I didn't actually look at my power. I just rode how I felt that was. And I ended up pretty much pacing the whole of like Alice Alberts was off, but I caught her, and then I kind of, I wouldn't say paced our group, but I was kind of going up the front for the entire climb. And that was the most enjoyable part because all these guys got out. I saw them, and it was just really nice to see a family because it was quite, I'd say, one of the most empty spectators on the course I've ever seen in a race. I was like, oh my God, there's no spectators anywhere. So when I saw these guys, I was like, oh my goodness. And like they had our dog's called Titch, and they had a massive sign with Titch's head. And it just made my day every time I saw it. So I went kind of veered over to try and like tap it for like a bit of energy. And it just, that bit was just the most best moment of the race for me.
But I think like just touching on the bike side of things, we were really trying to judge the dynamic predominantly from what happened in the men's race in 2023. And I know men's and women's race is different, but I think from the research that I'd done, it was pretty clear that by the top of the main climb, you needed to be within touching distance of top 10 was where we were pitching it. And so it was we had power numbers in mind of like where it would be kind of best for Nikki to sit, or what we felt was realistic, but it was also a combination of that and position, because once you kind of get up the main climb, there's some pretty fast sections where it's really hard to then make up time. And yes, you've got kind of another climb before the main descent. And so we knew it would be important to be strong there and not fade, which is, again, when I was looking at like some of the splits from when Lucy Charles did the race in June this year, that was kind of an area where I thought, oh, like perhaps there was an area of vulnerability for some athletes if they didn't pace it so well. And so we knew we needed to be strong there. And then obviously the descent and knowing that and being kind of technically good enough to limit damage, like time lost. It may sound defeatist, but we weren't in a position where we were like, we're going to make that a super strength. We didn't have the time or necessarily the resource to be able to be like spending huge chunks of time in the mountains, like figuring that out. So it was more, let's not lose time there. And I think that's probably where, like, you look at Laura and Kat, they were exceptional and they were the standout descenders of the women's field. But yeah, that was kind of the approach. Get as close to the top 10 as you can by the end of the main climb, be strong through the second half of the bike, and don't lose time on the descent, basically.
Mm. And yeah, you said that you didn't have the resources to spend too much time, but I think from Strava that you still spent a good 2-3 weeks maybe in the lead up to the race in Nice. So how important was that? And yeah, talk about that first, preparation on the course.
Yeah, it was perfect. And we looked at going out in the summer, and I was like, I've not got a very good memory. Like, there's no chance if I went in the summer, I'd remember when I got back there. So I was like, well, why don't we just go 3 weeks before? And it actually worked really well because we ended up seeing the course swim, bike and run in all conditions. Like, I saw the run in insane heat. Like, the first day I was like, Bex, I can't do this, it's way too hot. It was like 37 degrees on real feel. And then we also saw the bike in heat, but we also saw it in like really wet, like 3 hours worth of a ride wet, and how that looked. And again, the swim, saw it in swell, saw it in every conditions. So that was really useful going out before. And then I did the entire course. I rode it, I think, 2 or 3 times. And then I did that descent a lot. I tried to practice my best, but there was parts you could really practice. But then the main bit back into like town, I'm just going to guess this, like the last 20-ish K, you can't really practice properly because it's like traffic lights, cars congested. Like, if you can't just fly around the corner because there's like plant beds coming out, and then it's like one-way traffic kind of thing. So you can't practice that. But I knew what was coming off by heart really by the time it was race day. And, I'm not a comparable descender to, Kat and Laura, but I feel like I was a very strong descender by race day. And I think the main thing is just going in, like, what you just need to write down what makes you confident going in. And I felt very confident going into the race, knowing the course. But also we just had a very, very enjoyable lead up to race day.
Yeah. Bex, was there anything else that went into preparing specifically for the course? I'm thinking about things like perhaps gear changes to the bike or anything like that, or any other thing that you can think of that prepared, that you used to specifically be as ready as possible for everything that this course had to offer?
I think there's kind of a few key things that jump out. One was, like, obviously this is the first time a Women's World Champs has been held on this course. And so one of the things which, from a coaching process standpoint, I find to be quite important is like understanding what it takes to deliver the performance you want. And so my prep, if you like, started in 2023 when the men's race was on. And so I literally wrote down every single split at every single time point in the men's race to try and understand what the race dynamic would be, what was possible in terms of descending speeds on the main descent, and just try and understand as much as possible of what it would take to win the race, and therefore work back of what it would take to finish top 5. And so we kind of had that as a bit of a target of what it would mean time-wise on the course. Just simple stuff like I tracked the weather, because the women's race was a couple of weeks later to the men's race the year previous. And I wanted to know like what temperatures we could expect and how that would influence whether we needed to do extended heat prep or not. Talk to people like expert, Matt Bottrell has been a kind of close expert that we've used in the field around bike fitting and equipment choices. And we spoke with him. He'd been out in Nice in 2023 and, kind of said explored wheel choices, gearing. If anything, we regret not going to a bigger front ring. But we considered like different equipment choices, helmet choices, tire choices, and that was all informed based on ultimately kind of Matt's advice on that. Even stuff like how much fluid do you carry at various points, and that kind of all went into the mix. And we spoke with Rob Cheetham as well, who was Nikki's previous coach, first coach in the sport. He had great success with a couple of his athletes that he coached in the men's race in 2023. And so even just details like how do the special needs stations work? What does access for coaches look like on race morning? What's the start procedure? All of the details which don't necessarily inform the training plan, but they help you feel more comfortable in a racing environment like that. That was all kind of like critical to me in understanding that detail, so that come race day we felt prepared ultimately.
Did you come close to predicting the winning time then, with all the research you had done?
No. Second place, you got it right. You got Kat's time right.
No. I the winning time that I predicted was to the second what Kat's finishing time was, which ultimately probably shows I'm not very good at predicting. But I think in equal measure just highlights what an outstanding performance Laura had on the day. I think like that performance from a female is arguably one of the greatest Ironman performances of all time, and like she was fully deserving of that win. But yeah, I won't be replacing Thorsten anytime soon in his race predictions.
Well, he's not really predicting, he's just, I guess, projecting, which is a different thing. Projecting based on past performance. Yeah, a couple of gear questions then. I won't go into all of the things you mentioned, but gearing, what gearing did you have?
We went 54 on the front and then an 1134 on the back. And I wish we'd have gone bigger on the front. I wish we'd have gone 56.
Probably need to sort that out, New Zealand.
We do. It's on the to-do list, but yeah.
To-do list now.
Tires. Did you go for the fastest tires? Did you go for grip? What did you go for?
Puncture resistance mainly, because the roads in Nice were not that smooth. They were in parts, but there was a lot of kind of different manhole covers and raised bits. So she rode GP 5000 STRs. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think those are the most interesting bike tech questions for this course. Let me see here. So Nikki, I know that you had a more difficult start of the year. You struggled with some injuries. Can you talk a bit about that? And did it in any way impact your preparation, or did you have enough time to then get a full build into Nice?
Yeah, I had a terrible winter. I'd say the worst winter of my sporting career. Yeah, I think I went into Ironman Wales with pretty severe plantar fasciitis, which I thought was kind of mild, but it wasn't. It was pretty bad, and then I tore it there as well. I must have a high pain threshold because I thought, I'll be able to do Ironman Portugal, and that was the worst idea in hindsight. I should just have left it at Ironman Wales. But I tried and I failed. But that failure probably made the winter what it was, and that we were so diligent of getting this fixed. And it wasn't just offload from run or walk or whatever. It was offload from everything. Like we offloaded Swimming, so for instance, I didn't push off the wall with both feet for 3 months. So that was an offload. I didn't cycle for about, I think, at least 2 months. Didn't walk for like 3 months, and I was in and out of boots. Obviously didn't run for that period of time. So it was a good 4 months out in, like, whether it was that or not, I don't know, but it made me have a complete break. And, you look at life and you think, oh, like, even through the winter, like you do, like, I always get stuck in with cross-country races. And I'm like, God, when was the last time I didn't have like a 9-ish month period without racing? And it's like forever, like, kid. So actually, like, in hindsight, it's probably just like a nice reset of, just rest. And it allowed us, Bex was like, oh my goodness, like, because I'm quite a hyperactive person. It takes like a lot of training to really tire me out. And Bex like, what are we going to do with you? Because I couldn't, like, I was literally sofa bound. So that's when I planned the wedding. We'd been engaged 8 years. So I had to put my focus somewhere else. But yeah, so it meant, I think I started cycling again in January, maybe, like towards the end of January. I think we went on our first camp. Walking, sorry, I had to walk for like a month before I could introduce run walk. So you're talking, I think I started like 20-ish minute runs in March, and that's three 20-minute runs a week. I think even in April I was like on 30-minute, 40-minute, and I think we started intensity April time, maybe May. Yeah, so like I hadn't done any intensity since September, well, even before September, because that's when I raced. So yeah, so literally it's been a completely different run program than I ever thought imaginable, but I've produced my best ever running this year. So and I did a massive focus on swim and bike, and we looked at other areas we could work on, like Kranz loads in turmeric loading. You just have to look at different ways, BFR training, heat training, different ways of run. Because I had these, I reckon we worked out, and we reckon when we started doing, like, introducing like full runs, like when I say full runs, like consistent running, it's like your 20 minutes. We did that 3 days a week, and we just decided, you know what, for the whole year, we're just going to stick to 3 days a week running and kind of like increase that steadily, adding intensity once or twice a week, probably once really. I've probably not even done more than like 10 to 15 run sessions through the year, but we had to really maximize that running. So we looked at efficiency and just had to completely look at training differently to maximize what we could do. Just made you treasure that, because I love running. Like, I love going off and just doing like 2-3 hour runs kind of thing, just in the woods. But that is like, I can't do that anymore. Not with the risk versus reward. So we had to really maximize our time running. I actually want to go back and see how much I've averaged running a week. It's probably like, since April, I probably averaged 90-ish minutes, 2 hours of running a week, I'd say. That's a guess. I haven't actually. I'll work it out just to make sure, but it wouldn't be any more than that.
It would sit around that, I think, in your bigger blocks. So we kind of did a run block into Les Starbes, a first race of the season, and then a run block into Nice. And when she was in a run block, she was running kind of 4 hours a week as a maximum. Maybe nudging over a little bit in points, but it would have averaged about 4 hours a week. But around that, it was kind of not very much. I think it just. I think with this injury, it was really easy. Like, you could have taken the approach of looking at what you can't do, but like, in all honesty, credit to Nikki, because her view was always, well, what can I do? And that forced an entirely different way of training across all disciplines. Because when you haven't, historically she would have run kind of 7 hours a week. Well, we're not in a position where we can do that, so it then creates way more space for much longer riding and more riding and training for fun, because we weren't racing as frequently, and much more swimming. And that was an area that we needed to work on. And so really this year has just kind of naturally become a very different year to what we would have historically done. But I think for someone who's, 10 years into her racing career, that's so valuable, because I think your body needs change of stimulus. It needs different things to adapt to. And I think, arguably, if you keep doing the same thing that you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So there was no harm in my mind in trying something different.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Staying with you, Bex, and we'll get into that more on the training details shortly. But before that, Nikki raced 2 713, so it was Les Sables and it was Swansea, I believe. Yeah. So and those were in June and July. And I guess that was mainly due to injuries, as we've heard. But do you think that had a potential positive impact on having a great race in Nice, not having a big load of racing in the body? And how do you, and not just for Nikki, but in general, how do you feel in a year when we have more racing than ever, that potential race load has an impact on the performance on the biggest day?
Yeah, I think for Nikki specifically, we kind of finished the 2023 season and Nikki said, I need to be racing less, not more. Like, her gut feel was, if I'm going to be competitive in races, and by competitive, like when she stood on the start line, she wants to be podiuming, then her gut feel, and well, both our gut feel really, was you can't be doing that any more than 4 or 5 times just because of the standard of racing. And so there was never really an intent to chase. We weren't in a position where we could chase the Pro Series, and we weren't in a position where the T100 was a factor. But I think even if those opportunities were available, I think just with where Nikki's motivations lie, we wouldn't have been, I guess, in some ways distracted by that, because Nice was always the target. But I think certainly, only having 2 70.3s under your belt going into an Ironman, which is your biggest race of the season, compared to, at the other end of the spectrum, I think you had Els Vissler on 14 races.
I think it was 12. Or
12 races. Yeah. The difference is huge. And it's not just the cost of the race itself in terms of the physical cost of it. It's the travel, it's the disruption to training, it's all of those things. And I guess, being really blunt, Nikki's not in a position where she is out and out the best, a best racer in the world. Her delivery is, or her strength is in the ability to deliver on a day when it counts. She does that countless times over and over again. But doing that more than 4 or 5 times in a year would just create mediocrity. And that's not something which is motivating to her. And I think that's probably a battle which many athletes are now looking at in retrospective this year and going, how does, finishing 6 multiple times a year feel when you could be podiuming in most races that you choose to do if you chose a different race plan? And yeah, I think it's tough with athletes, but I think you get rewarded when you're clear on what your why is and what your purpose is, and you follow that.
So it's fair to say, Nikki, maybe you can answer this, next year, even assuming that you are completely injury-free the entire year, you'll be racing 4 to 5 times a year and trying to really deliver your best performance on those days?
Yeah, I'm someone who I have to be motivated for that race. There has to be a strong why of why I'm picking a race. And I'm only racing 4 times this year, but those races mean a lot. They drive me, they motivate me. I'm just fully motivated for those races. And obviously we don't have our calendar out next year, but I've got in the back of my head what I really want to do next year already. And my big passion next year for what's on the calendar already is Marbella 70.3 World Champs. Obviously I'm not saying I'm going to go win, but I just had 2 first place finishes there, and we went back because I just love the course. I love the place, I love the course, the vibe, everything about it. So that really motivates me. So I will, like we did this year of Nice, make sure that's not compromised in any way. And for Nice, we knew we needed a big, long build up, which wasn't rushed, which was in a nice, consistent, stable place, which we decided would be home. And that kind of dictated my choices. So we did Les Sables and Swansea, they were 2 weeks apart, back to back. But that was more of I don't want to say tactical. I'm going to say tactical. I don't know if that's the right word. A decision because then I could completely offload my foot, but I wouldn't lose much run fitness. I literally ran for 30 minutes between those 2 races in 2 weeks. But it allowed me to, because the fitness carried over. Then I needed to offload it again and then have a long gradual build back up into Nice. And I actually don't know if we told anyone what the injury was. It's plantar fasciitis with a little bit of tear. It's pretty much gone, but it does flare up a little bit after a race. So I need to be aware that after a race, I need to like offload for a week, and I can't just go bam straight back in.
But that flare is mainly caused. It's not necessarily. It's barefoot running. It's not necessarily the pace or the load of the running in the race itself. It's the barefoot into the water and out of transition.
Because Swansea had 0 barefoot. Like, you came out the swim and we were allowed to put run shoes on to our bike. I then was a bit chopper-tastic and put my bike shoes on at my bag in T1 and ran to my bike and my bike shoes, because it was like not carpeted, stone, like proper stones out in a car park. And then I did the same getting off the bike. So I had 0 time on barefoot, and my foot was absolutely fine in the race and after. So it's that barefoot running. I knew it would flare a bit after Nice because there was a good 800-ish meters of barefoot running there. Actually, twice through. Yeah, twice. I didn't think about that one. But I was kind of ready for the flare. That was fine. But yeah, I will be racing less next year. So I looked at the Pro Series races, and at the moment, I don't know if I have enough motivation to do those 3 Ironmans, which I would have to choose on the series, especially if Ironman Wales or Ironman Leeds comes up, because my heart will just go there, and they're obviously not going to be on the Pro Series. So I just basically go where my heart wants to go. And I just feel like if I'm motivated and I'm fully invested in that race, emotionally as well, I just tends to get the best out of myself. So yeah, I'll be going where the heart wants to go.
That makes complete sense to me. Let's get into the training block. So perhaps the time period that we can discuss is from after Swansea in July to Nice. So Bex, can you give an overview of that training block, what it looked like?
Yeah, I think like just in kind of numbers, if you looked at it on average, Nikki was probably training around 30 hours a week, of which 6 to 8 hours were spent swimming, around 20 hours on the bike, and then between 2 and 4 hours running. So it was kind of heavily bike focused. And I think not necessarily by design, but just one of the things which we unlocked, if you like, in the earlier prep in the year. So this was more in the run up to the Starbs, which informed then our prep into Nice, was the value of long rides. And so historically, we would have classified a long ride as like 5, maybe 6 hours in prep for an Ironman. And just because Nikki loves to ride a bike and just loves exploring, through the winter, she was kind of regularly just racking up 200k rides, 8 hours.
This was abroad, by the way, not in the UK.
Not in the UK, yeah, but 8 hours in the saddle. And there was time and space in the program to do that because she wasn't running a full program. And so it was kind of like, yeah, just go and have fun. Like, you're not running. It's pretty crap at the moment for you. Go have fun. But what that resulted in was a really noticeable increase in her efficiency. So where, like, if you take LT1 as an example, it was the biggest shift that we've seen in her entire career, in that she was sitting where she'd previously kind of sat at LT1, her heart rate was 15 beats lower. And that also carried through to the run when she got running again. And it was a little bit of a light bulb moment of, okay, that really works. And that's a real key ingredient of your training for Nice. And so we carried that through. And from Swansea to Nice, she rode 10 times. There were 10 occasions where she was riding 6 hours and over consistently in a ride. And it wasn't following a session structure as such. It was Nikki just exploring the surroundings that were around her and doing the thing that she loved.
Sometimes I'd just go to like a well-known bakery and cycle there, which was like 3.5, 4 hours there, get my bakery and then come home.
It really wasn't kind of structured as such. It was just time in the saddle. And I think physiologically that worked well, but also psychologically, it just started to break down some of those barriers of how daunting an Ironman is. Racing for 9 hours, that has still for Nikki been quite a daunting thing. And so when you're consistently riding 8 hours, 200 Ks and finishing it and feeling okay and able to then train the next day at intensity and be like, I'm okay with this, it gave a level of confidence, which then meant that Nice was kind of like, well, yeah, I've got this. like 5 hours on the bike, no problem. And so that was kind of a real key ingredient, was the length of rides that she was able to do.
So, Nikki, when you're doing those rides, are you just spinning really easy, just not really any much pressure on the pedals, or are you still trying to put a bit of like, getting to closer to zone 2 or something in those rides, or in parts of those rides?
I'm not very good at, like, there's definitely, for me, in my personal opinion, fine line between aerobic and I don't want to say pointless, but pointless. So you might as well. I like sometimes feel like some people just better off spent sat on the couch recovering rather than. So don't ever go out and just easy like poodle. However, I don't really look at my power when I'm riding easy. I kind of just get the feel of going because I have just my maps on. But yeah, I wouldn't just go out and just like poodle around. And I'd often pick a really cool exploring route, often the Peak District where we live. But yeah, like Bex said, it for me, a lot of it was just confidence. Like, we're not sat here saying to improve your LT1, you need to go out and ride 7 hours. Like, you don't have to. But for me, I sat down, I said to Bex, in this, like in training, I need to also do a bit of stuff which is just for fun. And for me, that's fun. That doesn't mean that would look fun for anyone else, because some people might be like, I would not find that fun. But for me, that is enjoyable. It's fun. I just call it my all-day buffet rides, and I just eat, and I use it also to train my stomach. So I don't actually I haven't got a nutrition sponsor. I'm a bit wacky with my nutrition. I just like to just kind of buy what I want. Like, even in the race, I was eating Snickers and chocolate milk and brownies and Haribo. But for me, sometimes a lot of that is just for my head, as opposed to actually that's what I need. And so I was just training my gut to eat anything and everything, and that worked as well. So it was confidence, enjoyment, and training my gut mainly for me. And then Bex was like, oh, but actually it's improving a lot elsewhere as well. Well, we think anyway.
But I think for context, like Nikki just kind of naturally rides those rides probably at about 60 to 65% of second threshold. So, you know, it's like she says, it's not pootling, it's it's riding. And I think for context, in terms of where Nikki's strengths lie, she comes from a rowing background. So way before she started triathlon, she was training for an event which is 4 minutes long. And
a bit longer than that.
6 minutes?
6 to 8.
6 to 8 minutes. But one of the kind of consistent battles we've had is naturally Nikki's physiology actually suits events more of an hour. Like, I'd love for her to go on the velodrome and go for the hour record.
Half an hour and an hour on the bike for me is like my ideal.
She retains range really, really well. And so it doesn't matter what time of year, if you said to Nikki, go and ride an hour best power, that it wouldn't, like, it just retains very well. She would sit kind of 3:15, 3:20 for the hour, regardless of fitness state. And so it meant that we didn't need to worry too much about that, because in the Nice course, I think one of the things which athletes did need was range, which a pure Ironman athlete often struggles with. And you needed the ability to kind of work kind of above LT1, slightly below LT2 on the climbs and recover, and that not cost too much. And we were fortunate that Nikki has that just naturally. And so we could really lean into the long stuff, because that's something which has been a weakness, but also help with the psychology of the duration as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think especially in the women's race, the relative range needed on the bike is higher because the power is lower than in the men's race. So if you have a top male athlete with a second threshold of between 350 and 400 watts, or in some cases above 400, but that's maybe a couple of them. But then anyway, to get over some of those steeper sections of the climbs, you can still do that easily with control being below your threshold. Whereas in the women's race, you have to have a higher relative range and use it, especially if you want to be competitive. I think so. That's probably an interesting factor for how the course and the race dynamics differs between the women's and the men's race.
Yeah.
What about other key sessions other than the really long bike rides in swimming and biking and running? What were the highlights in terms of sessions?
Yeah, I mean, from a running standpoint, we kept it very simple. So, like, Nikki would run 3 times a week. One of those runs would be kind of a 60 to 75-minute run where she would do 10 lots of 30-second hill reps. And that was more of like a mechanical load, because typically, like from a run form standpoint, she can fall into a trap of overstriding. And so the hills work really nicely to just kind of keep like run form in check. And it provided a bit of stimulus without it being high risk. And so that was a prominent feature in run blocks. And then we had 1 session a week, which I think in the very initial stages of the build started as something along the lines of 4 lots of 10 minutes at 350 a K, something like that. Maybe a bit quicker, 345.
When did that once or twice a day?
Yeah,
it was mainly under over, wasn't it?
And then we did quite a bit of under over work. So I think the longest run Nikki did was just before we travelled out to Nice, and that was 25K of total distance, of which she did basically 17K of a mile at 345 to 350 pace, and then a K at 415. And she basically alternated mile on, K off, mile on, K off. So working quicker than marathon pace and then slightly slower than marathon pace. And that was the biggest run that she did. And we kind of built on a theme of that. So the previous session would have been like K on, K off. And yeah, we just kind of we kept the build quite short. So 6 weeks was kind of, in terms of that run block, was all she needed. And then from a swimming standpoint, it was mainly kind of her swim squad that she trains with in Loughborough, which is the Paralympic squad. They train 5 swims a week, and it was just kind of a continuation of what she'd been doing all year. I think probably the most notable change going into Nice was that from when we landed in Nice, 3 weeks out from the race, she swam pretty much entirely open water.
That wasn't
It wasn't by design. It was just because the public swimming where we were was
horrendous.
Carnage.
I came out of the first swim and I was like, that's enough to put me off the sport. And I love open water. And I was like, I'm literally just going to go in the sea every day.
So, again, like I think it's credit to just Nikki and her adaptive mindset, because many athletes would be freaking out at that. I need to be in the pool. I need to know how I'm swimming. I need to know paces and times. Whereas she's pretty comfortable in going, I'll get the workout done in open water, and that kind of feedback of time doesn't matter. It's how she feels. And so we were able to do that and not be stressed by it. And I think actually on race day, that helped massively, because the strength you get from just that consistent arm turnover and knowledge of the tide and the currents and the swells.
It was one swim. I literally wasn't paying attention, and the current I don't even know where I went. I was pretty much in another country. I looked around to go back and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so far away. But I was just, it was one of my first swims. I was so unaware of what the currents could do. So yeah, I felt like I knew the sea. 3 weeks of swimming in the sea. And so when the swell came on race day, I was like, nah, I've done a lot of the swims, with this kind of chop, so that's fine. But yeah.
Do you know if any other athletes also had problems with the public swimming and used a similar strategy of open water swimming in the lead up to the race?
I think a lot of athletes actually, like, we stayed very, like, from the off quite close to race start. So we did toy with, do we spend 2 weeks slightly out of Nice in a better place to be able to swim, which I think is what the majority of athletes ended up doing. They stayed kind of past the airport where there was a good swimming facility. But we didn't want the hassle of like having to pack your life up and then move everything to another location in race week.
We're quite simple. Like, if we can get away with not having a car, like, I like just life's simple pleasures. Like, we didn't have a car for 3.5 weeks. I also just love being in the vibe. Like, that's just what I prefer to do. Like, I like to be in it. So where we were was like 500 meters away from the swim and the course, the swim start and that kind of thing. So yeah, that was a choice. So we knew with that choice could come a pool which didn't suit, and the opening hours were really bad. There was like some days it was just open for like 2 hours, and obviously everyone was going then. But you just get spoiled. Like our Loughborough pool here is, I just love it so much. So you get spoiled, and then you go abroad and you're like, oh, there's no fast, medium, slow lane. What's this about? Everyone just goes anywhere.
But it is interesting because I have heard several similar examples, not from this race, but in the past, of athletes that for one reason or another are without a pool for a certain period, but kind of get the work done in the open water. And I've only ever heard that having a positive impact. I'm not saying that it would work if you have to do it year round without access to the pool, but I think that at least for a limited time period, it as you said, Bex, it's variety. It's a new stimulus that you maybe don't have access to in a pool, especially in a 25-meter pool with very frequent turns. So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear you say that it helped with the strength on race day, and also obviously knowing the water, knowing the sea, as you said.
Yeah, I honestly think it's more the mental. Like if you can mentally cope with that and not having the feedback of what the pool gives you in terms of if you hit your times or not, if you're okay with that, then I don't see any downside to it.
Unless there's like bugs. Unless
there's jellyfish or whatever, but we were fine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's... And on the swim, though, so I think that that is your weakest discipline for sure. And as you said, you came out with your dream pack, so it was a great swim for you. Not just thinking about the last 2 months into the race, but in general over this entire year, I guess. Have there been any specific things that you've changed in your approach to swimming that you felt have helped? And do you also see an improvement in your pool swimming time, for example, that then ended up translating into the race?
I think fundamentally for me is the squad I swim with. Like they are like some of our best mates, like literally love them to bits. Like they're all at our wedding. So for me, that is so important. It motivates me to go swimming, and we have a laugh, and we also get the best out of each other. And if I didn't have that, I'd need to find that somewhere else. But around that, I was also, in the winter, it was all I could do was swim for like 3 months. And so then we did quite a bit of extra work, didn't we? A lot of underwater work with cameras, and I did a lot of extra swimming. Like, I think one week swam like 12 hours or something. I was just like living in the pool. But when that's all your focus is, actually 12 hours didn't seem that much. It was like, oh, well, it's not. It's like not even 2 hours a day kind of thing. And when you fully focus on something, you can notice improvements, because obviously when you add in the bike and the run, obviously your fatigue's higher. So all my attention was just on the swim. And that helps massively when then I could introduce bike. So bike and swim, how much you can move on those two disciplines when you're not doing all three. So actually, like, maybe it isn't a downside to have a bit of a niggle on you have to take a backseat on one disciplines, because you can really move on the other two. But yeah, for the swim, you came along quite a lot, didn't you?
We did a bit of technical work, definitely, which...
arm turnover, that was the one.
Yeah, so I looked at arm turnover using like good swimmers, so Lucy Charles as an example, and looked at like what they were sustaining stroke rate wise over an Ironman, and then compared it to what Nikki was sustaining, and it was significantly lower. And so we looked at increasing that, because I was like, look, if we know that from a catch and pull standpoint, you're not as efficient as Lucy Charles, but if you're then also taking less strokes, then you're really not going to, you're really on the back foot. So we worked on stroke rate. I think Nikki's point of basically swimming fresher because training load overall was less really helped shift things on. It's training more. But then I think actually in the final run into Nice, it coincided with the para guys training for the demands of the Paris river swim. And so a lot of their sets were working on change of pace under fatigue. And you heard Nikki talk about actually being able to surge onto Daniela's feet in the race. I think that was a product of those sessions and that kind of ability to change pace when you're already operating at, let's say, first threshold as a bit of an arbitrary figure or just above it. And so that was something which I think was a prominent part of the sessions that she was doing and helped come race day for sure.
What sort of stroke rate did you manage to work up towards as a kind of target Ironman stroke rate?
I think we were looking at around 69 in the end, weren't we?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just was like, Bex would tap me, go out, get more. Oh.
Yeah, I think like Ironman pace, it was around 69, and then start speed was kind of 70 into 78, 79.
Yeah.
We did a load of like sessions where, so I'd do a hard session with the squad on Tuesday morning, and then Tuesday afternoon, obviously just resting in between. Tuesday afternoon, I'd do 4 rounds of, it was 25 meters with a pool boy, wasn't it? And I had to do 28 strokes per 25. Yeah. So 25 meters, counting 28, I had to do 28 strokes. You'd have like 2 seconds rest. And you do that 20 times. Have like a 50-meter kick reset and do that 4 times through. So you're doing it arm turnover off a really fatiguing session in the morning. I'm not saying that's the stroke rate I have to go at. It was just an efficiency session kind of thing.
You're getting a bit of an insight into Nikki's lack of want to use technology, because obviously like you can wear a bleeper, but she was like, no, I'll just count my strokes. And so that's a little bit like, what stroke rate did we land on in the end? It was mainly off of counting strokes per length.
And also, I'm not very good at counting, so I was having to count how many 25s I've done, how many strokes. Counting 2 seconds off the clock, I was like, this is too much counting.
The 2-second rest is that's just mean.
I know.
Especially for a second swim of the day.
Yeah.
And coming back to the key sessions, just one more follow-up on that. So biking wise, other than the long rides, is there anything there that stands out in the lead up?
Yeah, we kind of like with the range in mind. So we kind of, in the final, I think she did 6 sessions of these, we were basically looking at developing second threshold stability. And to do that, we were basically working lower end of LT2, but trying to acquire as much time as possible there. And so, like, as an example session, I think we did 10 lots of 8 minutes off of, was it a couple of minutes recovery, sitting at 90% of second threshold. And so we kind of, we prioritized duration and effectively trying to make that as robust and stable as possible, because we knew in the race that Nix would be working slightly less than that. But if you could be robust there, and she adapts really quickly to that stimulus, she doesn't need much.
And we also did some like lactate testing on the main climb. So I use Full Gas. If you're unaware of what Full Gas is, it's basically a platform where it's like the realistic course. They've got like 2,000 courses on there, and like 200 of them of 70.3 and Ironman courses. And obviously Ironman Nice is one of them. We were able to just ride that course loads all through the year, like since like December. I've been practicing on that course. So we were doing quite a bit of testing on that to make sure what we were planning to go at was the right kind of, because it's like realistic to real feel of the hill and what you're riding. So we were able to do some testing and some sessions on that to utilize that.
So what did you find in the testing? That's quite interesting. What power seemed realistic, and what sort of lactate did that give you?
My lactate seems to not, like, my lactate doesn't like going high, does it?
No, you really struggle.
I really struggle, but obviously that sometimes is a massive downer because I can't. So I can access high on bike and run, but swimming I can't. So that's a real weakness of mine, is that first initial go out. Because I think, like, like if you do that classic set in the swim of the 6 100s, I think my max lactate I've ever got to is 8. Whereas some of the squads, like Claire Cashmore, who's got like 7 swimming Paralympic medals and a few now triathlon, she can get her lactate up to like 14. But
yeah, I think like when we were practicing on the climb, we were aiming to ride like 240, 250 watts on that. And she was below 2 millimole. It was like 1.4 to 1.6. And so, and the heart rate was, like I say, it was 15 beats lower than what she had previously sat at for kind of a first threshold effort.
But also getting used to like clearing the lactate. at higher power.
Yeah.
And kind of being able to be efficient to come back down and clearing it, because the course was so spiky. Like, I've never ridden that spike in my life. I don't ever want to ride a race like that again in my life, because it's really very painful. But yeah, that's probably the product of what we're looking at for New Zealand, because I'll be coming back down from the swim and trying to work my way up through the field, and that will be spiky as well. So I'll probably have to go back to those kind of things leading into New Zealand.
Yeah. Are there any other things, just in general, if you think to your entire career, just looking at the way this race played out, the bike had a massive impact. You can basically look at the result list, and in the top 8, I think there was only one difference between top bike split and result, and that was Chelsea, Sodaro, and Marjolaine. They were kind of opposite. Marjolaine had the third fastest bike, but was 4th, and vice versa. But other than that, it was fastest bike, first finisher, second fastest bike, and so on. So, and you had the 5th fastest bike accordingly. So the bike had a massive impact on this course, and you had a strong bike to capitalize on it. And I guess my question is, looking back at years of work, not just this year, what are some general things that you think has helped you become a strong cyclist?
Oh, that's a good question. Is that one for me or for Bex?
Yeah, you can start, Nikki.
Obviously, my rowing background, I have to go back to like my background base. That really helped rowing. And I spent a lot of time as well injured rowing. That's why I came away from the sport. And when I was injured, I was on the bike. But also my first coach, Rob Cheetham, taught me how to be like confident in riding. And by that, I mean like how hard you can actually go. Because sometimes like in races, I go so hard in a 70.3, I'm like, no way am I going to be able to run off this. And then you end up running off and you end up doing well. So yeah, it's just learning confidence and how hard you can go. But it takes years. Like, I'm not even joking you. Like, my first race as a pro, I was 22 minutes behind Lucy Gossage, and I was literally like 17 minutes slower on the bike than the top 3 girls. And if you look at that alone, that's enough for people to run a mile and be like, oh my goodness, there's no chance. So, and I am someone who I've not come into sport and kind of gone from zero to hero. This has taken me 9 years to get a top 5. And it all depends, what athlete you are, but kind of just knowing how long it takes to develop is really important. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to go with this coach for a year and they're going to make me go from average to world-class cyclist. Like, you need to understand that's going to take years. And then you need a good coach and plan in place. And yeah, for me, going back to the fun side of it, but on the flip side of that, if I was doing these 7-8 hour rides and I wasn't hitting these LT2 sessions or the key sessions, Bex is probably going to be like, you need to strip back those rides. So actually working out how to not compromise those key sessions. So like working out a plan. And it's the same for me, especially with swimming. Like, I put my key sessions, which I need to deliver in the week, and they kind of have to be not compromised. And like, for instance, a Tuesday morning swim, sometimes like in the past, we've done like a hard bike on the Monday, but then my Tuesday morning swim is horrendous. So that doesn't work. So actually it's protecting those key sessions through the week so you can maximize them as well. And I wouldn't say like I'm not a training peak slayer. Like, how can I best put this? I think understanding how to set yourself up to not fail in sessions. So like, I'm quite open in the week to being like, do you know what? I'm too tired. I'm going to put that session somewhere else. So when people are like, I try and get green all through the week, or I don't want to see red, but figuring out and understanding your body to be like, I'm not ready to do that today. I think I'll be all right in 2 days' time, and like moving it along so you can maximize those sessions. I think that's really important, and not kind of just be like a slave to the training program. That's just worked for me. Like, I have moved stuff around because I'm like, Bex, tomorrow that's not going to work. I don't know. I've kind of just... Bex is very good at articulating answers. I just splurged.
Those were lots of great points, like really great points.
Yeah. Nothing in order, just splurged.
I think
Bex can articulate the answer now.
Trying to think what else I can add there. I think all of what you said was really valid. I think naturally Nikki has always been a strong cyclist. So if you look right back to her first 20-minute FTP test that she did on a random watt bike in a random gym with Rob, I want to say you were not far off of 300 watts there. And that was in a very untrained state. And so, like, I think that there's always been that natural kind of power. It's been creating the endurance around it, which has taken the 9 years. I think other things which have allowed consistently strong riding is, and this will sound pretty left field, but being absolutely meticulous with race bike setup and race equipment. Like that is, and Nikki has driven this, and this has come from Rob, who coached her previously. Like, you make sure you've got fresh race tires on, a fresh race chain. You don't change anything in race week. Like, it is, we're so meticulous about that I think why I think that's important is that's allowed consistency of race results, because barring probably one race where she had a mechanical.
Oh, but that was with a horrific bike.
Yeah, and that probably leads
in yourself at the beginning.
To the second point, yeah.
Yeah, is something I cannot express that more. Like, and I know that's really difficult if you're a skint athlete. Like, we were so poor, weren't we, at the beginning? Like, when I say we were poor.
Still are.
No, we're fine. We were so poor at the beginning, and I really wish we'd somehow worked out to invest in a bike then. And just, because I've bounced around on some rubbish bikes, and then the investment will pay for itself, because then you'll have the results because you're on a good bike. But, the amount of results, like this one bike, it was so crap. This guy was like, I want to sponsor you. And I was on this bike and it literally kept breaking. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So that's something we had to learn the hard way. So if there's a new pro up and coming, I'm just like, try and invest in your bike, because it will pay for itself essentially. But it is tough. It is tough. There's just the money side of the sport is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and when you started, it was a bit easier than now, at least in terms of bike prices.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, now it's mad. There are some really good deals online and some good secondhand deals.
What if you can give like 2-3 different, what are the most important things when you're selecting a bike, when you're looking for a bike for somebody that is maybe in that position now? What are the things they should consider or prioritize as these are the most important things in a bike?
I think this, like, the simplicity of the in my mind, the simplicity of the frame and the ability to adjust to the position that you need is critical. So I think a lot of bike manufacturers have historically made things quite complicated. So, like, just having something which is simple and reliable, something that fits, like, and is fitted well, and like it's just like you can trust in it. It's reliable. You're not going to get halfway down the road and your saddle's fallen off, or
that actually happened to me.
Your seat post has dropped, or your handlebars have dropped, or any of those. Like, you just want something which is reliable, and that I think is probably the most critical thing.
And then develop a really good relationship with a mechanic, because if you look after that, like, mechanics self-employed, if you look after them, pay them straight away, they'll fit you in and look after you. Like, if you built that long relationship up, and I know it sounds so simple, but a bike always breaks like 2 weeks out from a race. I don't know what it is, or like you start putting your race stuff up on, you're like, oh no, got a slit in my tire or something. Like, you need to rely on a good mechanic that you can just really trust. So that's key. I know it sounds really simple, but develop that relationship with a mechanic nearby you that you can trust.
And one more question about equipment. So with those 8-hour rides, what saddle are you using? Is that something you've had to experiment with?
I've never had saddle issues. Like, when people are like, I've got saddle sores, I've never had that ever. So I'm with, what is it, an ISM saddle? Yeah, I had them on all my bikes, every single bike. Never had issues, but maybe I'm just lucky. You're
probably lucky, but those are good saddles. Yeah. So, and to get some you've already given some benchmark numbers that helps relate to the performance in Nice and the splits and so on. But I thought it would be cool to see how does a what is your 400-meter swim time, for example, if you know, or if you can estimate what your best 400-meter swim time would be?
I actually haven't done one of those for ages.
What would you ballpark it at?
Is that the one which is meant to be sub 5? I actually do not think I've done one of those in at least 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, but as a rough estimate.
I don't know. What would it be? 4 lots of... Can't even do the maths. You'd want to be sub 5, wouldn't you?
Well, sub 5 I think would be very good. I think you...
That is 115 per 100.
Yeah. I think Nick's would probably be about 5:10, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and bike power, so you said that she can probably hold 320 for an hour, 310 and 320 for an hour?
Yeah.
I reckon a bit more than that.
There you go. A bit more, maybe.
A bit more?
Depends how fit I am. What stage of the year are you getting me to do that?
I think any time of the year she could sit, 315, 320.
Yeah.
So probably a bit higher when trained.
Do you have LT1, LT2 from a lactate test or estimates of that?
Doing 2.7.
I think probably LT1s would sit around 250, 255, something like that.
And running wise, any benchmarks there when you, maybe before the injury, if you did any 5Ks or 10Ks or something?
So that's a funny story, this one, because in lockdown, I decided my aim in lockdown was to do a 5K run. And we all had this aim to do this 5K run. So I did one at Mallory Park. And it wasn't the most planned because I was watching Bex and our friend Claire do one locally around here. And then I was like, I've got 40 minutes to get to Mallory and do a race. We just rocked up, got on the start line. And that was like pre-carbon shoes as well. And I did 16, 17 there, pre-carbon. 16, so I reckon I could get 15, 50 something in my carbon shoes now.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable with carbon shoes and some fitness gains.
Yeah, because that was 3 years ago now as well. So yeah.
Is there anything you would do differently if you go back again to Nice in 2 years' time in the preparation?
Oh, that bigger ring.
We'd put a bigger chain ring on. I think we could refine the performance, but I don't think we would like. I think a lot of what the decisions we made, they were built upon a decade of doing this, and I back the majority of the decisions we made. I think if you'd been really picky, I'd hire basically a bike specialist to help with descending, to turn that into a super strength rather than like good.
Yeah, because we don't have a bike so we don't have a bike sponsor, and we don't have that bike team, which would obviously be of massive value. You know, you watch some people prepare and I'm like, whew, we are so chopper compared to this. You know, wind tunnel, like we haven't really been properly in a wind tunnel ever. We've done a few runs, like a local guide to us has helped us out in return for helping him out, but it's very much a small testing procedure. It's not proper full-on testing. So that could help. But yeah, within our financial means and support from paying for biking, we probably maximise what we can afford to do.
Yeah, and what about, are you planning on going to Kona next year, or is it Marbella that is the full focus?
Marbella is my full focus. Like, yeah. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I can't maximise my potential at Kona, and we probably could look into that more, but that would come at compromise of a lot of other things, and I don't want to compromise, like going to other races. And Marbella, my heart and my motivation is just Marbella 70.3. Like, it's just where it is. And yeah, I've always done that, and even more so in the last couple of years, and it just gets the best out of me. So I feel like if I went to Kona, I'd feel like I'm going because I have to go rather than I want to go. And that's, for me, that's not good enough. That's not a good enough why to go. Whereas Marbella's like, that gets me, like, I'm excited for that already. Like, as soon as that came out, I was like, I am buzzing. Like with Nice, as soon as Nice came out, we were like, that is our priority. We're not compromising anything leading into that race. And that's going to be the same for Marbella. Yeah.
How are you feeling about Taupo? How excited are you about that?
Yeah, I am actually really looking forward to it. Now I've got over this weird illness I had straight after. It was almost holding, and then the day after the wedding it just smacked me in the face. It was literally the wedding finished, I got back to my room and I was like, I feel ill. But I also drank a lot, so I didn't really know if it was hungover or drunk, even more so. Yeah, so Taupo I'm really looking forward to. Like, we've always wanted to go to New Zealand. Like, it's just a bucket list place to go to. And at first, when I qualified, I was like, oh, can we afford this? Like, because we need to go out so far in advance. And like, you start calculating, like, this is going to be 10K quickly. That's insane. We were just like, well, let's definitely go because the course looks really cool. It's an amazing place. And we're going to do our honeymoon after. But no, like, I still feel like 70.3 is my strength. And I feel like this is quite raw because we still haven't discussed the race or anything, but I feel like I've achieved everything I've ever wanted in the sport. I don't want to sit here and sound defeatist. That is just where my head's at right now. So I feel like I've got nothing to lose. And I feel like I'm ready to go out to Taupo and just absolutely smash myself. Just give it everything I've got on the course. Yeah, and just maybe race
without fear or consequence.
Yeah, basically race without fear. Because I've done really well in 70.3 bikes, but there's just a tiny bit more I feel like I can go to. But I've always been like, oh, but the run after, and I feel like for this one, like I might just go for that tiny bit more and just see what happens.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's actually quite inspiring to hear, taking some motivation from hearing you say that. Maybe trying that myself.
Splurging at you again.
Yeah. Nikki, can you give 3 pieces of advice to listeners who might be going to race in Nice in the next year for the men, or in 2 years for the women?
Yeah, I think, I'm just going to give it as like maybe to age groupers. I think look at the swim, bike and run in parts. Understand, say, for instance, the swim. It will be highly likely wetsuit. And I was hot in my wetsuit and it was 21 degrees and usually it's warmer. So like when we arrived, it was 26.7 degrees and it dropped to 21. That's just ridiculous. So that might not happen again. So if you're an age grouper, understand that you might be racing in like 23 degrees. Like I know when I came out, I drank my first bottle way too quickly. Bearing in mind, I had like an hour and a half worth of nutrition in that bottle. I drank it like within half an hour. I was like, oh my goodness, that's ridiculous. But understand that you're going to come out hot. So like even one of your age groupers, I think she bought a sleeveless wetsuit.
With the age group athlete I coach, we trialed basically a sleeveless wetsuit versus sleeved and looked at temperature and perception of temperature. And yeah, she ended up going with the sleeveless, which I think was a great shout.
Yeah, might even look at like trying to get your core temp down before race start. I don't actually know if that's a thing, but I'm just...
Well, yeah, we trialled slushies as well. With,
okay. You did.
Yeah, so like having a cold ice slushie before the race start also helps just kind of keep that core temp down.
And then like, there's so much about the bike you could talk about. Like if you start talking about nutrition, like do you want to take it all with you? Are you getting it off the course? Is what you're getting off the course good for you? Because... like, for instance, I don't think they had any Morton energy drink. They just had electrolytes, didn't they? So, like, when you're taking the fluid off the course, you're not actually getting energy. So are you okay just taking the gels and bars, or do you want other stuff? Like I had Snickers, I had Milka Brownie, and I had a lot of Haribo. And also, like, understand where you're having it on the course. So, like, there's so many sections where you're kind of on your bars, twisting and turning, and you're not able to really get nutrition in then. So really think about when you're taking in the nutrition on the course, and like obviously understand the last 20k you're going down the hill, so actually drinking is really very difficult on that section. So actually you could forget to completely have any nutrition in that last section. That could really mess up the start of your marathon. But yeah, down to pacing, down to equipment choice.
Well, I think probably the key bit on the bike section is just not being alarmed at how long it takes you to get to the top of the main climb. Because I think it's really easy to look and go, oh my God, I'm going to be here all day. But just know that it does get quicker, and there are some really quick sections, and the latter half of the bike is very quick.
But also like trust your pacing. Like there was a part of that race that like I did the out and back and I was really struggling on that plateau. And I just had loads of nutrition. That's like stay in my own bubble. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But you can like come back out of that later on. It did take me ages, like until I was almost getting back off the bike.
I think probably the final tip of people, if you've not been, is that the conditions in the mountains can be really variable. And I think a lot of people, like, it could have been like, thankfully it wasn't, but it could have very easily have been 10 degrees and rain, which if you haven't got the right gear with you, you wouldn't be finishing. And that's kind of historical of the Nice course.
Let's tell you a funny story off the back of that.
That people can end up not finishing. So I'd always put a jacket in special needs, track the weather, and track, like, AccuWeather was actually really reliable. Track it in the various different points of the course, because
like
it's not
is one of them.
It's not the same. The weather system is not the same all the way through the course.
Yeah, because there was chance of rain on our race day, and I'd done the bike course twice in rain, and I was shivering so much I was needing to get a taxi at one point. I didn't actually get in a taxi, but I wanted a taxi. It was that cold. So I actually rode 160k of that course, or whenever the final aid station was, with marigolds in my back pocket, because I was terrified, because it had chance of rain. And anyone who's ridden in mountains before, if there's chance of rain, it could mean heavy rain for like hours. Because when we rode, there was chance of rain. It rained for 3 hours and we were shivering with a jacket, gloves, arm warmers. So I took these marigolds, 160k, and I was like, right, I don't think it's going to rain now. So I chucked them out at the aid station. But we also put in, that silver blanket thing?
An emergency blanket.
Yeah, into the back part of my pouch on my bike, because I didn't want to get into trouble. But yeah, we also put stuff in special needs just in case. There's a lot. I could talk all day about stuff, but and then the run, understand there could be a wind. Like when we went out and it was a tailwind and it felt quite warm. But then on the way back, it was a stonking headwind. It was actually quite demoralising, but understanding that is a possibility, that it's really windy on one way. Special needs again was really, really good. I think I saw the age group special needs, and that looked really good as well, actually, on the course, and maximise that, because cups, like I was stopping and walking a lot of the aid stations just to get the fluid in. If you use a special needs, you can guarantee how much fluids you're getting in those bottles, and it works quite well, because I think after special needs, the next aid station is not too far away. So if you're taking like 500 mils, you can run with it for a bit and get it in. Yeah, I think there's so many points we could go on all day.
Well, you could.
Yeah, but I think those are all excellent points, and probably through the rest of the discussion as well, people have already learned a lot. So I think it's a great place to finish on. Yeah, I don't have anything else. Nikki, any final words on your part, or anything else?
No, just thank you for letting us come on and chat a load. I'm a splurger. Bex is articulate, so you get something amongst us.
Yeah, and I guess Instagram is probably the best place to follow you. And
yeah, I'm probably most active on my private Facebook page, as in like my triathlete Facebook page, but also Instagram. Those two, yeah. Okay, great. I'll put the links in the show notes. Well, thank you so much to both of you for coming on and sharing everything. It was really, really cool to hear. And congratulations once again on an amazing result and on achieving a big goal, career-long dream, I guess. So congratulations. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us on.
I hope that you enjoyed that interview. I know I certainly did. I found it really interesting and lots of insights and takeaways. I get to some of my personal takeaways in just a tiny bit. Before reminding you that you can find the show notes on scientifictriathlon.com, and that we will have a couple of links there, particularly to Bex's previous appearances on the show in episode 429 and 353. So my personal takeaways, there are quite a lot, but a few bike-related things stood out to me as really interesting. First, maybe the obvious one, the really long rides. I actually have some limited experience with using this strategy personally, and I've always felt that when I manage to incorporate these over-distance rides, basically, I would consider anything over Ironman distance as over-distance rides. It is hard to do because of the time commitment, of course, but I've found that if I manage to do that, it does help a ton with fitness. So it's probably not right for all different athlete profiles, but I think that for the athletes that are more slow twitch dominant, it can work really well. And of course, provided that you have the time to do that and you love riding your bike, if you fit those criteria, then it might be worth giving it a try and see how it works for you. I also liked the idea of getting to the point of not being afraid of pushing the bike really hard and worrying about the run later. This is probably more specific to pro racing than age group racing, although it can certainly apply at the front end of competitive age group races as well. But it's not something also that you can just decide that you'll do and then it will work, to just push the bike as hard as possible and then you'll still be able to run well. It's something that you basically earn by putting in the training, putting in the hours, so that you have the fitness and the strength, the endurance, that even a very hard bike doesn't take that much out of your run legs. So it's still an interesting thing to consider if you are somebody who is at the pointy end of whether it's pro racing or age group racing, that perhaps you have some kind of psychological barrier that you can try to move a bit and try to push the bike a bit harder and benefit in your final race results for doing that change. And the final point is the attention to detail around bike tech and using that as a competitive advantage, or depending on what level you're racing at, it's not even a competitive advantage, but just something that you do to level the playing field. As an age grouper, I do think that this attention to detail can pay off, not just as leveling the playing field, but as a competitive advantage. But keep in mind as well that it's not just about buying speed, although to a certain extent you can definitely do that, but being smart with your choices of things like gearing, position on the bike, components that help you achieve that position, and so on. So yeah, I think it's more about putting in the effort and still putting in the time and energy, even if it's not necessarily time and energy in training, and less so about putting the money down, putting the cash down, because that can help you some, but there's a limit to how much that can help you. All right, so a bit of promotion for what we do at Scientific Triathlon. If you have any training questions or training goals that you want to achieve, then there are several ways that we can help you. First of all, we offer individual coaching. Coaching is not a training plan. It is a service that does not have any limits on the communication between you and your coach. And the goal is not just to help you achieve your goals and become a better athlete, but also that you can learn about training so that if you one day stop working with us, you'll be much better at coaching yourself than you were before. A second option we have is consultations, where you can basically bring any questions that you might have to the table and talk with an experienced coach. If you have some one-off queries, or even you might want some regular check-ins but not be ready or willing to commit to full ongoing coaching, then consultations can be a good solution for you. And finally, and this one might be a bit counterintuitive, because when you think of training camps, you generally think about the training that you put in over a week. But it's also important to keep in mind that in addition to putting in that training, doing it in a great group of like-minded people, that you will be able to interact with the Scientific Triathlon coaches on long rides, at the breakfast and dinner table, and around all of the training. So you can go home not just with fitness in the bank from the camp itself, but also lots of learnings and ideas. And I would encourage you to not be shy to ask us questions if you join our camps, because that's one of the things that we absolutely love to help you with and want to provide as part of these camps, I should say. So you can find out more about all of these options, coaching, consultations, and anything else we have, training camps, on scientifictriathlon.com. If you have any questions, please email me directly and we can discuss further what might be the best options for you. The season is nearly over. Maybe it is already over for a lot of you guys. So if you already have goals for 2025, now is a great time to be thinking about how you can achieve them and become the best athlete you can be. And we would definitely love to help you on that journey. Big thanks finally to our sponsors, Precision Fuel and Hydration, that you can find on precisionfuelandhydration.com. If you're looking for high quality, practical and tasty fueling and hydration products, make sure to try Precision Fuel and Hydration. There are a range of options from drink mix to gels to choose, so you can easily find your personal favorite. And don't forget to take 15% off your first order with the code TTS24. And thank you to Senate. The Senate Swim Trainer is a great tool to have in your toolbox to improve your technique and power, to target specific aspects of your stroke, and to maintain consistency when you don't have time to get to the pool. You can try the Senate risk-free for up to 30 days and get 20% off your first order on senateswimtrainer.com/TTS. Thank you, as always, for listening. Keep training smart and keep loving triathlon.